डॉक्टर बाबा साहेब आंबेडकर ओपन यूनिवर्सिटी.
Namaskar. I, Jayjit Trivedi, welcome all of you from the Chaitanya studio of the Jyotirmay campus of Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar University, Ahmedabad. Today, we are discussing MJMC paper number 2, unit 2. The paper is called Understanding Media, Mass Communication and Journalism. This is part 6th of the unit 2. Now, first of all, let us look at what we have discussed earlier. Earlier, in section number 2, we have discussed that journalism in coffee houses in the beginning was happening, right? We all know there were different coffee houses in the England, in London or different part of worlds wherein journalism used to happen in coffee houses. Laureates or elite people would gather at these coffee houses and journalists would be sent to these coffee houses and they would ultimately report about gossips and happenings of the city or debates, right. Starting of the noteworthy newspaper, the Tatler in 1790. This was a pioneer newspaper both in term of content and in term of management. Journalism management, which is different sections, hierarchy of the newspaper, in all those things the Tatler was the pioneer. Reporting by the journalists with ghost names. Ghost names, that is using different name of a person who is not existing at all. So, 3 founders were there of the Tatler. Remember those names and mention those names in the comment box if you remember. They used to write with ghost names in the newspaper. The rise of newspapers in 18th and 19th century and starting of the newspaper, the Spectator. Now, let me know who started the newspaper Spectator. We have already discussed in last lecture. Let me know in the comment section who started the newspaper Spectator. Now, today we will be discussing section 3, that is the contribution of Tatler and Spectator in modern journalism. Now, today we will discuss about the Spectator, which is a journal or newspaper. Spectator, right. The Spectator was not just a simple newspaper, but it was an English teacher for those who wanted to sharpen their language skills. So, Spectator had a flair of language wherein people used to read that newspaper to sharpen their language, their use of language. So, and their language skills. So, Spectator used to work not just for disseminating information, but for betterment of the language as well. We will see. One of the readers was a die-hard reader of the essay published in newspaper and had maintained a collection of 12 essays. So, Spectator was one of the earliest newspapers or journals where people would collect their writings and would store them and would use them for their betterment. He used to recommend all those who came in his contact to thoroughly read these 12 essays if they wished to improve their writing style. So, who was that? Alexander Hamilton. Alexander Hamilton used to keep the cuttings of the newspapers. He collected 12 of the essays and he used to recommend to people to read these essays for what purpose? To improve their writing style. So, it became educating newspaper as well. Then some years later, the Guardian was launched in 1713. by Edison and Still, right. These founders started the Tetler, only they started the Spectator, and now they started the Guardian. Still was looking after the Edison in the early days, as Edison was busy writing the play Cato, which went on to become extremely popular play. So, mind it, these people were not just ordinary journalists, they used to write in literature as well, as we can see that Edison was busy writing play Cato. So, he used to write plays as well. In July the same year is 1730, Edison took over the responsibility of the edition and Still campaigned for his parliament election. Now see, connection of journalism is with literature, with politics, with business, everything is included in journalism. We can see that here, right. Edison ensured that only truth was preached through the Guardian. This is very important. Only truth was preached through the newspaper, right. So, that made a benchmark, that came with a standard that newspapers will only cover what is the truth. Now, taking cue from the complaint box practice popular in the 15th century Venice, where any citizen could file a complaint by simply dropping a letter in the box without disclosing his or her identity. Edison invented citizens to write for the Guardian, Edison invited people to write for the Guardian. Mind it, what we can say this is again would be a section called letter to the editor, right. We have this section in all the newspapers today, wherein people write letters to the editor and they describe their problems. These letters are printed in the newspaper and ultimately the authorities are coming to know that these are the problems at people at large. Now, and we can say that it is citizen journalism as well. So, from taking the cue of complaint box practices, the editor to the letter was started by the Guardian, and who started it? Edison, right. This is how citizen journalism or reporting began in the real grassroots sense. Earlier, only journalists would write for the newspaper. The Guardian was the first one who started and who invited, in fact, people to write for the newspaper. Even during those days, readers were allowed to speak out their mind and enough space was provided in the newspaper through relevant sections like letter to the editor and opinion columns, right. As we discussed about them earlier, there used to be a specific space for readers to write and they would describe their feelings or problems of the society in the newspaper. They were also allowed to share their opinions, right. So, giving opinion is a different thing and reporting of a certain event is a different thing. Mention that thing in the comment box, that how opinions are different from just mere reporting the event. Now, how these newspapers became guide of modern day journalism. Let us look at this thing. The writing style of Joseph Edison is noteworthy, right. As we know, he was also a man from literature, so his writing style was very unique and he pioneered writing style for journalism. Now, let us see what happened, how he wrote. Though he was a great writer, especially at penning poems, prose and essays, yet while writing for the newspaper, he completely avoided the usage of heavy phrases, dramatic gestures, and didn't indulge in exaggeration. Now, he himself was a very good writer. He could write poems, prose, and essays, but he avoided all these literary jargons and stick to the basics, and he avoided heavy phrases, dramatic gestures, and exaggerations. He used to write in very simple language so that the end user or end reader would be able to know what is written and what does it mean. So, his style of writing was for the common man as it was in the layman's language, right. We can see that today if we read about the scientific reporting or war reporting, there are certain terms which are very much specific to the field only, but journalists would make them easy so that laymen like us would be able to understand what is written there. That is what a journalist is expected to do, as the newspaper is for all masses and classes, right. Mind it, newspapers are basically for masses and classes. You need to write whatever field you are writing about or whatever subject you are given, but you need to write keeping in mind your reader only. From this newspaper we can learn that. Whereas his co-founder still had a completely different skill. He loved to question the immorality in society. Hence, for him, mass media was a platform for creating awareness amongst reader. So, two major things happened here. One is use of the language, use of a language which each and every person reading the newspaper can understand, and the other thing is ask questions to the society and create awareness amongst the readers, right. These two major fundamental things still journalists follow, till the newspapers follow. Now, then both of them proudly claimed that their newspaper did not have a reflection of politics or leaning towards any political party, right. No reflection of politics and no leaning towards any of the parties. What the journalists do, main task of journalism is report as it is happening, right. So, no biasness towards any political party makes it very balanced newspaper. Do you know, today as well people and most of the newspapers follow this policy only. The fashionable touch was also totally avoided. They never insulted or condemned anyone in the newspaper, right. No personal comments, no judgmental thoughts. They never insulted or condemned anyone in the newspaper. This is also a standard set by them. In other words, it could be described as balanced newspaper, right. What is a balanced newspaper? No biasness towards any person or party or group, right, and no insult or condemnation of any people in person, right. It can be authentically claimed that Edison and Still had truly understood the role of the newspaper, right, which is to educate society, and that is what they have successfully done through these newspapers, right. The role of the newspaper is not just to disseminate information, but to educate or drag the society towards an better position, right. So, this is also a role of the newspaper that they understood so early in that time. Now, they used to provide entertainment to the readers and never attempted to engage or get larger audience at the cost of the content quality, right, which has become the order of the day today. They never compromised with their content quality. Today we can see in the era of social media, to get attention of the people, many creators do such things which are not to be done in public, right, but they stick to the quality and maintained it throughout. We can see that today in the world of media, sensationalism is adopted as a strategy to acquire larger market share irrespective of the authenticity of the news, right. We can see that today, we can see that news channels, newspapers, especially news channels, what do? They keep on giving us breaking news, and without checking or rechecking that news, they just give information from these sources, right. So, but these newspapers gave us the standard that you must maintain your quality even at the cost of your audience. But today, unfortunately, many are not following this thing, right. Edison and Still, through the Tatler and Spectator, were sharing information and educating people, whereas in complete contrast to this, the present day media, which is focusing on sensationalizing politics in a bid to reach out more people, right. The focus of Edison and Still through these newspaper was to disseminate information and educating people at large. But today what media is doing? They are creating sensationalism and they are entertaining people at large, basically to acquire more and more attention and audience. Basically, journalism is more about simplicity, telling or sharing the information in simple language without decorating it with phrases or adjective or even sensationalizing it, right. This summarizes all of this, that basically journalism is more about simplicity, avoid jargons, avoid adjectives, avoid sensationalism, that is journalism, right. Now, in other words, share the information as it is and leave it to the readers and viewers to form an opinion or take a stand on it. Edison and Still were least concerned about the number of audience they were reaching out to. Again, same thing, they were least concerned about the reach, they were more concerned about the quality of the content. Though these newspapers have closed down years back, but by and large the style of writing still remains the same. This is in fact the greatest contribution of the Tatler and Spectator for the field of journalism, right. So, we will keep it to this point only until we meet again next time. Namaste.
स्वाध्यायः परमः